Bharti, we can get started.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. I am Bharti from GST Zen and we'll be starting our webinar now. So e-invoice for 10 crores and above is beginning from next week, from 1st of October, as we all know. So it's high time that everybody has integrated their e-invoicing, and we are here to clear any doubts that you might have, or if you are at the end point still looking at options as to how to go about it. So we will also be telling you about the solutions that GST Zen provides in order to generate e-invoices. So let's get started now. Okay, so e-invoicing webinar. In this webinar, we'll be taking up the basics, API and Excel integration through GST Zen. Okay, so what are the major topics? So as I said, we'll be discussing the basics of e-invoice, legal provision, issue of e-invoice to the customer, and GST Zen's offering. So before moving on, let me tell you a little bit about GST Zen. GST Zen started in 2017 mainly as a compliance software, and since then we have also delved into e-invoicing. E-invoicing first came into picture and it was implemented from 1st of October 2020. So since then we have been providing the facility of generating e-invoices to customers across various industries. Besides e-invoicing, GST Zen also provides return filing and reconciliation reports. So through the software, a person can file GSTR 1, 3B, 9 and 9C. We provide reconciliation between books and GSTR 2A, 2B. We provide PAN level reports, consolidated report of GSTR 1, 2A and 3B, as well as e-way bill reports. So we have other tools in order to make your life easier. The tool called Autopilot allows a person to perform a single function for multiple GST numbers at a time. We provide JSON to Excel utility, and we have various validators which help in validating GSTs and HSN. Okay, let's look at some of our numbers. We have more than 30,000 users. Lakhs of reports have been downloaded from our software. Millions of invoices are processed daily, and we have more than 20 crore invoices in our database. So why e-invoicing? Why should you go for? Why has the government implemented e-invoicing? You should not think of it as a burden. So whoever has implemented e-invoicing, they have realized that the have
Bharti, we are unable to hear you clearly.
by 96%.
Bharti, are you there? Hello. If you can hear me, can you please send a thumbs up in the chat, everybody? If my voice is audible.
Also allowed them in cutting back time. So it has saved around 80% of their time, and it has made the process 50 times more efficient. Okay. Uh, okay, is my voice breaking?
Yes,
Or
Bharti, your
is
voice
it better now?
is breaking. Your voice is breaking.
Hello, is it better? Hello, am I audible? Hello,
Bharti, you're
I
audible.
can
Can you
hear
hear?
you.
Bharti, can you
Okay,
please
is my
continue?
voice better, Shivatsa?
Yes, but it breaks every now and then.
Okay, I think it's due to some internet issues. Yes, I can hear you.
You can
Yeah,
continue.
okay,
If the same issue persists, then I will take over and share my screen.
okay. So, yeah, interrupt me whenever it's breaking,
Sure.
and I will
It's
begin again.
Bharti, it is still breaking. I will do one thing. I will share my screen. Okay.
Okay, understood. Yes, so let me begin with the slide again. So we should go for e-invoicing. It brings down your cost. Okay.
Bharti, if you can hear me, I'll start sharing my screen. To all the participants, we are sorry there is a technical issue. Please give us 2 minutes. We will
Yes,
fix this issue and we
I
will
can
continue
hear
with
you.
the presentation. Okay, just a minute. I will start sharing my screen. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. And if my voice is, Bharati or Manisha, can one of you let me know if my voice is clear?
Yes, Shivatsa, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So sorry about the technical issue. We can continue now with why e-invoicing. So e-invoicing was established with the agenda to ease the way business was being done. And because of e-invoicing, India's ranking in ease of doing business has moved up from 77 to 63. So instead of looking at e-invoicing as a burden, we should look at it at a way where it is simplifying how we do day-to-day business activities. And also going digital will standardize various processes. It will reduce the data that is being processed on a daily basis. And also, since there are a lot of validations that has been set forth by the e-invoice portal, the number of errors we are making in the data entry will also significantly reduce when we use softwares. And the additional benefit is that it will save cost as well. So there is a 96% cost saving, 80% time saving, and the efficiency has improved by 15 times when it comes to doing business. So this is why we should accept e-invoicing because it has a lot more pros than cons. Finally, so what is e-invoice or electronic invoicing? So no, there was no prior standard under GST. So this is trying to unify the process and make it simpler. And this is also a must for interoperability across various players: supplier, recipient, e-waybill system, written filing, etc. So when you generate an e-invoice, it will get auto-populated in your GSTR1 within 2 to 3 days. So what that will do is it will also be available in your recipients two-way. You can also generate an e-way bill along with an e-invoice. And when you're about to upload your GSTR1 return, this invoice will already be populated in your GSTR1. So that way it makes it very easy to file your GSTR1 return. And like we discussed in the previous slide, it eliminates the need for data entry because of technology being used. The need for data entry is eliminated if we accept and we do e-invoicing. So moving on. So this is the progress of e-invoicing in India. E-invoicing was first rolled out for companies with turnover of more than 500 crores in 1st October 2020. That was the first phase of e-invoicing. Then the NIC portal, the Government of India rolled out e-invoicing for companies having a turnover of 100 crores and between 100 and 500 crores on 1st January 2021. On April 1st, 2021, it was introduced for companies with turnover of 50 crores. And then this year, April 2022, it was introduced for organizations with turnover between 20 crore and 50 crore. So what is proposed to go live on October 1st, 2022, that is in a few days, is the introduction of e-invoicing for companies having a turnover between 10 crores and 20 crores. So this is how the turnover slab has been reduced from 1st October 2020 until 1st October 2022. That is within a span of 2 years. And we can expect this turnover threshold to go further low in the coming months. So moving on. Now we will be looking at certain legal provisions of e-invoicing. So who is required to issue e-invoices? So what we discussed, I've been told that my voice is breaking. Is it fine now? Manisha, can you confirm? Hello, Manisha?
Yes, it's clear. It's clear.
My voice is clear, right? Was it breaking up this whole time?
No.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we can continue. So like we discussed in the previous slide, taxpayers with aggregate turnover in a financial year above 500 crores have done it from October 1st, 2020, and above 100 crores was from January 1st, 2021, above 50 crores from April 1st, 2021, about 20 crores from this April, that is April 1st, 2022, and taxpayers with aggregate turnover above 10 crores will have to generate e-invoices from 1st October 2022. And these are the relevant notifications and rules that are to do with e-invoicing. Firstly, it is the CGST notification 68 in 2019, which brought about e-invoicing. And there's a rule 48, which tells us what the structure of the invoice should be, what is the manner of issuing the invoice. There is a form GST INV1, which specifies all the sections of the e-invoice schema. And any invoice that is not of this structure is considered invalid according to Rule 48.5. And Rule 48.6 states that multiple copies of the same invoice is not required. There is only one copy of the invoice required. Moreover, e-invoice cannot be generated for the same invoice again. For an invoice, you can generate e-invoice only once. So this is what Rule 48 states. And coming to the persons exempted from generating e-invoices, so all special economic zone, that is SEZ units, are exempted from e-invoicing, and persons covered under CGST Rule 54, Sub-Rule 2, 3, 4, and 4A are also exempted. So what I mean by that is insurer or a banking company or a financial institution, including NBFC goods, any transport agency, any passenger transportation service, or admission to exhibition of cinematograph films in multiplex screens. So all these kind of entities are exempted from generating e-invoices. Now coming to which transactions are covered by e-invoicing rules. So firstly, e-invoice needs to be generated for B2B invoices, B2B credit notes, and debit notes. Okay, so for invoices, credit notes, debit notes that fall under B2B, e-invoice needs to be generated, and even export of goods or services. So export invoices also should become e-invoices. So the documents that do not need to become an e-invoice are bill of supply, a delivery challan, an ISD invoice, a B2C invoice, if it's a business to customer invoice, then an e-invoice does not have to be generated. And purchase from an unregistered dealer also does not need an e-invoice. And import of goods or services is also exempted from becoming an e-invoice. So the government has clearly put forth instructions that say only these kind of documents should become e-invoices or need to become e-invoices. And for these kind of documents that are shown in pink on my screen, e-invoice is not applicable to those documents. Moving on to the registration part. So firstly, there are two portals that the government has provided. One is the sandbox portal and one is the production portal. So e-invoice system is enabled on trial sites for taxpayers with a PAN-based turnover of more than 100 crores in a financial year. And these are the URLs where you can create an account and do the testing. The third option, if you see, that is the live portal. So that is where the e-invoices will reside. That is the portal we will be hitting when we generate an e-invoice in production. And here is some other information, some useful links when it comes to e-invoicing. From the first link, we can get the list of taxpayers who are currently generating e-invoices. From the second link, we can get what is the status of e-invoice. Like if you want to know whether you are enabled for e-invoicing, you can go to the second link. The third link is Excel tools to generate e-invoice. Then the government also provides tools to verify your signed QR code and signed invoice. So these are some useful links. Now coming to the process of e-invoicing. So this is how the GSTN consumes an e-invoice. Firstly, you will create an invoice. You being the seller, you will create your sales invoice in your ERP, your accounting system, your offline tool, or your Excel-based tool. So whatever current method you are using to generate a regular invoice, you can continue with that. Secondly, you will have to send the data to the e-invoice registrar. So the e-invoice registrar can be GSP or an ERP who is authorized by the government to generate e-invoices. So the data can be pushed to a GSP or an ERP. What the GSP or ERP will do is push the data to the GST system, where the invoice will get auto-populated into the GSTR1 return. Finally, the response will come back and is sent to the seller. So the response is in the form of a digitally signed invoice, the QR code, and as well as the IRN number. So this is how the flow of e-invoicing works. And likewise, after e-invoice is created, it can also be sent to the, like an e-waybill can be generated, and that will be maintained in the e-waybill system. So now we are going to look at some terms and definitions to do with e-invoicing. Firstly, invoice reference number. So this invoice reference number is the most frequently asked question. A lot of people want to know what is this IRN number. So for IRN number is something that combines the taxpayer GST number, financial year, document type, and invoice number. It is a 64-digit alphanumeric number to uniquely identify an invoice. Now, this is more of a number for the computer system than it is for us. We do not have to remember this number at all. We do not have to worry about this number. This number is simply used to uniquely identify an invoice. So as you can see on the screen, it says humans can ignore this. So we do not have to worry about this number. But for a tax invoice to be called as an e-invoice, it should have an IRN linked to it. That is what qualifies it to be an e-invoice. IRP. So the IRP is nothing but the invoice registration portal, the portal where we will be sending the e-invoice, whether in the format of JSON or in the format of Excel. So what the IRP does is it checks for duplicate invoices. The IRP already has an existing database. So it will check whether the same IRN exists. If it doesn't exist, it will confirm that this is a new invoice and it will upload it to the e-invoice registry. And one step after that is it will also upload it to the e-waybill portal and the GST common portal, that is your GSTR1. And then the IRP will return the digitally signed invoice with the QR code. So this is how the IRP works. The IRP is authorized by the government. If it is not authorized by the government, it has to be authorized by the government because there are a lot of procedures in place to become an IRP and to run the operations of what an IRP does. And so the first IRP was run by the National Informatics Center, as you can see. And the second IRP is proposed to be run by the GST portal of India. So just to summarize, it verifies and acknowledges all the e-invoices and it replies within blink of an eye. So the response is usually 1 or 2 seconds. That is how quick and real time the response is from the IRP. It will hold the invoice for 24 hours. So if you generate an e-invoice now, within 24 hours, you can use the IRN number and you can find the e-invoice in your e-invoice account. After 24 hours, it will not have a copy of that invoice. And this is what a standard response from the IRP looks like. There will be an IRN number, of course, like you can see here. It will also provide the acknowledgement number and the acknowledgement date. Then it will provide the signed invoice and signed QR code. Now, using the signed invoice, you can verify if an e-invoice has actually been generated. And when you decode the signed QR code, you will be able to get the information on the invoice. Who is the seller, who is the buyer, what is the HSN code, total invoice value, and so on. Status is nothing but whether the invoice is active or cancelled. And if an e-waybill is generated, the response will also contain the e-waybill number, e-waybill date, until when it is valid. So this is a typical structure of the response from IRP. This is a screenshot of a digitally signed invoice in the NIC portal. You can see that there is a QR code, there is an IRN number, and the acknowledgement details. We will be taking another look at this during the demo. The demo is scheduled after the theoretical part of e-invoicing. So I will be creating an e-invoice and I will verify it in the NIC portal. Signed QR code. Signed QR code is nothing but a QR code that is digitally signed by NIC. It contains high-level parameters of an invoice. Like I said, it contains all the important information about the invoice: seller, buyer details, total invoice value, what is the HSN code, and so on. And using a QR code, you can know whether an invoice is authentic or not. So only if there is a valid QR code attached to an invoice, it can be considered as an e-invoice. This is an example of a signed QR code when it is decoded. So you will have the buyer GSTN document, the date, document number, the type of the document, whether it is invoice, credit note, or debit note. We have the IRN. Item count is nothing but how many line items the invoice constitutes. The main HSN code, seller GST number, and total invoice value. So this is very high level information of the invoice that the signed QR code provides. Now, talking specifically about GST Zen's integration process. So we accept the raw data, that is the e-invoice data, be it in JSON, be it from Excel or from Tally. We will accept that data. We will convert that to a format that is accepted by the IRP, that is JSON format. We will send the data to the IRP. The IRP responds with the QR code and IRN, and we store that information back into Tally. If it is Tally is our source, we will store it back in Tally. If it is Excel, we provide an Excel with the IRN and QR code details along with the invoice details itself. And if it's an API, we will provide these details in the response. So this is what we do. We collect information, we collect the raw data, structure it into the format specified by the NIC portal, send it to the IRP, and relay the response back to the seller. Now we will be looking at certain frequently asked questions. So the first set of questions are regarding the amendments and cancellation to e-invoice. So we can make a change in our books. After creating an e-invoice, we can make a change in our books, but we cannot make a change in the IRP portal. Once an e-invoice is generated, it cannot be modified, it cannot be updated, it can only be cancelled. All right. And if at all an e-waybill is generated for an e-invoice, first the e-waybill has to be cancelled, then the e-invoice itself will be cancelled. At what time is the e-invoice required for a particular transaction? Okay. So if at all the invoice involves movement of goods, then before the movement is commenced, you need to generate an e-invoice, so that if at all there is a check, they will validate that an e-invoice has been generated for the goods that are being moved. And invoice for across the counter sale. So before completing the sale, an e-invoice has to be generated. At the moment, there is no hard and fast rule that you have to generate e-invoice on the same day as raising the regular invoice, but we recommend that you do it at least within a week's time to comply with the guidelines. So now there is a slide about how e-waybills work. So e-waybills, as we all know, are governed under the rule 138 of CGST rules, and e-waybill can also be generated simultaneously along with IR. So during our demo, we will be demonstrating how IRN and e-waybill can be generated at the same time. The other option is you can generate an e-invoice, then after some time before the movement of goods, you can generate an e-waybill. So that is also an option. They don't have to be necessarily generated at the same time. Now the IRP supports e-waybills only for invoice. It will not support it for delivery challan and B2C and so on. If needed, we have to first cancel the e-waybill and then cancel the invoice. So that is the rule set forth by the government. How to print an e-invoice? So what we can do is any tax invoice with an IRN and a QR code that are both valid automatically becomes an e-invoice. It only means that you have generated the e-invoice, you have informed the government knows that this is an electronic invoice, and eventually it will also get auto-populated in your GSTR1. So you can just embed the IRN and QR code in your regular PDF format and take a printout and issue it to your buyer. QR code in digital display is sufficient during transport. So if the goods are in transit and if there is a check, if you produce the QR code, it is more than enough. How to send e-invoice to recipient? So the IRP will not send it for you. So what we mean by that is, although you are generating an e-invoice and the e-invoice is stored in the IRP portal, at least for those 24 hours, and later in your GSTR1, IRP is not going to send the invoice to your buyer. That system has not come into effect at this point. As of now, you will have to manually send the e-invoice to your buyer. At GST Zen, it can be automated. We have certain options where if you set the option, after e-invoice is generated, it will automatically be emailed to your buyer. So you do not have to worry about the copy going to your buyer. All you have to send them is the basically an email along with the JSON and the PDF. So if you do that, that is sufficient. And as we speak, the government is building a system to send e-invoice directly to the recipient. It is not functional at this point. And another common question is the IRP portal, in their response, they provide a lot of fields. So is it necessary to save all the fields in our ERP? That is what we will be looking at this slide. So all that we have to save or is necessary to save is the acknowledgement number, acknowledgement date, the invoice and QR code digitally signed by the IRP. So I would recommend that you save the acknowledgement number, acknowledgement date, IRN and the QR code. So if you store these 4 in your ERP, at any point you will be able to incorporate this information into your PDF and provide the PDF to your customer. So these details should be enough to save in your ERP. Until what time can I register an e-invoice? So anytime before issuing invoice, you can register an e-invoice. Like I said, what we recommend is within 48 hours. So if you generate an invoice today, please generate it by September, generate an e-invoice by September 25th. That is what we recommend. E-invoices can be generated for backdated invoices as of now. Can an e-invoice be cancelled? Yes, absolutely. You can, let's say you have made a mistake in the invoice, but you have already generated an e-invoice and now you want to edit it. Unfortunately, we don't have that option, although we can cancel the e-invoice. So within 24 hours, the moment you know that there is a mistake, immediately cancel the e-invoice and generate a fresh invoice with a new invoice number. The contents of the invoice can be the same, the value can be the same, but the number has to be different. And can an e-invoice be modified? No, it cannot be modified. Now, there might be a question about what if we exceed the 24-hour threshold and we forget to cancel the e-invoice. Then you can simply remove the entry from your GSTR1 before filing your return for that particular month. So this is the slide about, if you forget to cancel an invoice within 24 hours, this is what you will have to do. Should not report the invoice in your GST returns. And you should also cancel the invoice in your books of accounts so that when you reconcile, it'll get reconciled perfectly. Now, here are some common errors when it comes to e-invoicing and how they can be avoided. So the most common error that we have noticed is with the HSN code. So at GST Zen, we have a free tool that we provide called the HSN code validator. You can simply copy the HSN code, paste it here, and it will tell you if it is valid or not. Second option is PIN code does not match state. Now, this is we are already handling this error in GST Zen. If at all you provide the PIN code of Tamil Nadu for a state of Karnataka, we will flag an error saying this PIN code does not belong to the state, and you can immediately change and correct your data and re-upload. Recipient GST number is cancelled. So if you are trying to generate an e-invoice for a buyer whose GST number is cancelled, we will flag that as well. Although it is difficult to avoid, you can check the status. We have provided a link. You can check the status of the buyer at this link. Inconsistent amounts. So this is more of a human error. So if at all you provided tax rate as 18 and the taxable value is 100, instead of the taxes being 18 rupees, there is a manual error and you enter it as 19 rupees and the e-invoice gets generated. So that is a mistake. And how you can avoid that is by using proper software. When you use software, we will flag the error and say this is not the computed tax amount for this much taxable value and this much tax rate. So immediately you can change the error before uploading. So that is where software will play a vital role in correcting your errors. Now, moving on to some technical aspects of e-invoicing. So the most technical thing about the e-invoice is the JSON schema itself, because it has a lot of sections and all the fields need to be of a certain type. They have to have values between a certain range and so on. So that is the most technical aspect of e-invoicing. Communication with the IRP, sending e-invoice to customers and receiving e-invoice from suppliers are the other challenges. But all of these challenges can easily be handled if you use a software like GST Zen. This is a flow diagram of how an e-invoice gets generated and how the data is sent back to the ERP or accounting software. So I'll just do an audio check before I proceed. Manisha, just to be sure, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So moving on. So from the ERP or accounting software, the invoice details will be sent to the IRP portal. But before that, it will be validated. So any software you use, there will be a set of validations that it will run and it will flag errors. If it is valid, if all the data is accurate, the valid invoice will be sent to the IRP portal. What the IRP portal will do is attach the IRN and the digital signature, QR code and everything and send it back to GST Zen. And then from GST Zen, this data will go to the ERP where the information or the response details can be saved. And also from GST Zen, you can email and send the invoice in PDF format to the buyer. So this is the workflow of e-invoicing. And now if we look at the schema itself, like I had mentioned in the previous slide, there are a lot of sections. So we have something called as header details, which is basically your invoice number, invoice date, supplier details, recipient details, IRN number, acknowledgement details, and so on. Then we have transaction level. So what this means is whether it is B2B, whether it is an export invoice with payment, export invoice without payment, and so on. Then we have document level details like document type, whether it is invoice, credit note, or debit note, the document number, and the document date. Then we have the seller and buyer details, which are very much necessary for an invoice. We also have dispatch from and ship to, which is specifically it needs to be entered if the invoice, if the goods are being shipped from a different location, and if the endpoint where it is reaching is also different from the buyer's address. So the ship to and dispatch can be provided in that case. Then we have the line item details, of course, the document totals, the sum of all the values of the line items. Payment related information can also be entered like bank account number, bank name, IFSC code, and so on. Reference details, if it consists of any reference to a previous invoice, or if there is a purchase order number or date, that also can be entered. And finally, of course, the e-way details are necessary if you want to generate an e-way along with the IRN. So these are broadly all the sections of the e-invoice schema. And this is just a regular template. We will share GST Zen's template or how our PDF format will look after the webinar. In fact, during the demo itself, I will be showing you how GST Zen's PDF format looks and how we incorporate all these details into our PDF format. So here is a small table denoting the number of fields and number of sections of the e-invoice schema. So if you see, there are 28 mandatory sections and 45 optional sections, and in all we have 133 sections. Sorry, 133 fields, and now all these fields are not necessary for an e-invoice to be generated. Only the mandatory ones we can provide and generate an e-invoice. Here are some sections that can repeat. So if we have 3 or 4 line items in the invoice, of course the line items will repeat. Some information about the line items will differ, but there will be multiple line items, so that is allowed. Any preceding document reference, if there are multiple references to an invoice, that also can be incorporated. And any additional supporting documents and extra attribute details of the product can also be added, and they can repeat. So now we are looking at the fields of supplier, recipient, dispatch from, and ship to details. So these fields that you see are common to these 4 sections. You will see that the GST number, trade name, PIN code, and state code are mandatory. The rest of them are optional. And likewise, for line item details also, we have certain fields like product name, description, HSN code, quantity, and unit, which is mandatory. The rest of them are optional. We will share this presentation with you after the meeting. You can go through this presentation in detail, and it will clear a lot of your doubts. These are some additional fields for the line item details. We have the rates here. If at all any discount is there, that can be added, other charges can be added, and so on. So coming to GST Zen's offering and what we provide, we have multiple methods of generating e-invoices. So our primary methods are through Excel. We have integrations with ERPs and databases where we fetch the data to either through ODBC or direct database access. We also have a secured folder method, a drag and drop method, and API method, which is especially useful for software developers. And then we also have ready-made solutions for Tally and SAP. We have add-ons for SAP and TDLs for Tally. So we have a range of options when it comes to generating e-invoices from your source data. And we provide both on-prem and cloud-hosted solutions. So GST Zen is a SaaS platform. So it's a cloud-based account where you will be creating your account and logging in and everything. But we also provide on-prem solutions. So if you have a database, then we can integrate with that database with a solution that will be running locally on your system. This is a brief diagram of how we fetch data through ODBC access. We will connect to the database, fetch the data periodically, send it to the IRP portal, and we will write back the information received from IRP into a database table in your database. These are the steps that we will be following when it comes to database integration. Firstly, we will analyze your database schema, create a view to fetch the invoices, create a table to store the IRN QR code, configure the GST Zen connector, and finally, after the e-invoice is generated, we will provide PDF reports. We don't have to go in depth. If at all you're looking for a database integration, you can get in touch with us and we can walk you through the complete process of how e-invoices can be generated through database integration. So second option is the API itself. So it's a very developer-friendly API and easy to use API. All you have to do is call our API with the JSON as the body and with the header where you will be entering a token for authentication, and we will provide you a response. This will be much clearer when I explain it with a demo. This is a sample API response. Again, I will be showing this and explaining it during the demo, so we can skip this for now. GST Zen's Excel connector. Our Excel connector is very similar to the government portal. We have a standardized template where you can upload data, and once you upload the file to GST Zen, you can generate e-invoices in bulk. We also, like I mentioned, we also have Tally connector, where we provide a TDL. You can connect to Tally and directly generate an e-invoice. Before going to the mandatory fields, I would like to show a demo of how e-invoices can be generated through GST Zen. So I'll be switching my screen now. Bharti, can you see my browser screen?
Website is visible.
Okay. So what you see here is the GST Zen dashboard. When you create a new account with us, this is what it will look like when you log into the account. Here, we will display all the GST numbers that you have added to your account, and you can add a new GST number by clicking this button. You can enter the GST number, we'll automatically prompt the name. You can choose the type of taxpayer and add the GST number. So all the GST numbers that you manage in a single account will be available here. I will be doing the demo today for this GST number. So I click on this GST number. And towards the right-hand side, you will see something called as e-invoicing. Before that, I would like to talk about features that come under our GST software. We provide GSTR 1, 3B, 9 and 9C reconciliation as informed by Bharti at the beginning of this webinar. We also have a tool to reconcile your books data with the portal data, and you can download consolidated reports from GST Zen. So that's a brief summary of the GST software features. Moving on to e-invoicing, you will see a button here called e-invoicing. So when I click that, we will display all the different methods of how e-invoice can be generated. So firstly, I would like to talk about the GST Zen Excel full. So this is our standardized Excel template where, like I said, it is very similar to the government's Excel utility. You just have to enter the data in our template and upload it back. So I will quickly download the template and show you what the file itself looks like. If you see, there are 3 sheets: about, sales invoices, and master data. About and master data sheets are purely for reference. You do not have to enter any data into these sheets. If you have a doubt about, if you have a question about a column, you can refer to these sheets. We will tell you whether it is mandatory or optional, what are some example values, and so on. So it is purely for reference purpose. Now, the sales invoices sheet is the important sheet where you will be entering the data. And here you will observe that some columns are in one color, the other columns are in a different color. So we have done that to make sure that all the columns belonging to a certain section of the invoice schema are of the same color. If you see here, document type to IGST and intrastate, these 7 columns belong to the document details section of the e-invoice schema, where the document type, date, and number is mandatory. Hence, it is in bold. All the columns that you see in bold are mandatory columns. If you do not provide a value for these columns, e-invoice cannot be generated. Moving on, we have the supplier details. Here, the GST number, legal name, address line 1, city, and PIN code. These 5 fields are mandatory in the supplier details section. Likewise, in the recipient details, the same set of fields are mandatory again. That is the GST number, name, address 1, city, and PIN code. Ship to and dispatch are optional sections. So if at all you do not want to provide ship to and dispatch, you can leave these columns blank. But if you provide even one of these columns, so let's say you provide a value for the dispatcher legal name, you have to provide the other information marked in bold as well. Okay. Same with ship to. If you provide one of these columns in this section, you have to provide all the other columns that are in bold. If not, you can leave the complete section empty. Moving on to item details. So here you will be entering information about the line items, that is the HSN code, the description of the product, the UQC, taxable value, tax rate, and the tax amounts. So once you enter this information and you have your data ready, you can upload it into GST Zen. I have an Excel template with filled data. As you can see here, I have certain invoices, I have some data here, and you will see that I have some invoice numbers. Now I've actually generated e-invoices for these invoice numbers. So I will be changing the invoice number, otherwise the software will throw errors. So I make it 120, and I'm going to have 2 line items for the first invoice, and then the rest of the invoices can have 1 line item, because I want to show how we also handle multiple line items in GST Zen. So I've entered the document type, which is INV for an invoice. If it is a credit note or a debit note, it will be CRN and DBN respectively. I've entered the document type, the document date, the document number, transaction type. So the transaction type is actually necessary. It is not in bold because by default we will consider it as B2B. But if at all you do not, if at all it is an export invoice, then you have to provide it as EXPWP or EXPWOP based on whether you are collecting taxes for the invoice. So we recommend you provide the transaction type. Place of supply is not mandatory, but of course you can provide. I have also entered the supplier details, the recipient details. Ship to and dispatch, I have left them as blank because they are optional. And then finally, I have entered the item details. So when I have the file ready, I can just save it, come back to GST Zen and upload. You can either select the file or drag it and drop it. We support both options. And I will just select the file now and say upload your Excel. So when I do this, you will see that there are 3 tabs here: summary, errors, and invoices. So summary will give you a brief summary of what is the number of documents that you have uploaded. So in this case, I have uploaded 6 documents here, which I can verify by just looking at the invoice number 120 to 125. I've uploaded 6 documents. So our software tells you that there are 6 documents with a total taxable amount of 3,290 and total taxes of 592. And this is the range, the date range between which the invoices exist. So this is purely for you to tally with your Excel to ensure that what you have uploaded and what we are summarizing here is actually accurate. Errors. If at all there are any errors in the data that you have uploaded, we will display the errors here. We will tell you which is the invoice number and what exactly the error is over here. If at all there are no errors, then we will just display this message. Coming to invoices, this is a more descriptive summary of what you see in the summary tab, right? So you have the customer GST number, the customer name, what is the invoice number that you are uploading, the date of the invoice, the taxable amount, and finally the taxes. So this is just the first step of uploading invoices. So you have uploaded invoices to GST Zen. You have not uploaded it to the government portal yet. Before you do that, you can click the button here, the PDF button, and verify that the data is all correct. Now, if you see, this does not contain an IRN number and a QR code because this is a regular tax invoice. This is not an e-invoice. Now we will be generating an e-invoice. You can see that there is a yellow circle next to the customer GST number. According to the legend, it means e-invoice is not yet created. So now I will click this button and say yes. The e-invoices will get generated. So the data is going to the IRP and coming back with the message that an IRN has been generated for all these invoices. And you can see that it has turned to green. Now when I click the PDF button, you can see that there is an IRN. There are details of the acknowledgement number and the date, and there is also the QR code. This QR code can be scanned by the government portal app, and we will be able to verify the invoice. And if you see here, everything has turned to green. So we have generated e-invoices in bulk for all these invoices. Now I will click on one invoice number and show you a more detailed view of the invoice itself. So here we will display the IRN number, who it is issued by, whether it is in Sandbox portal or whether it got generated in the production portal. That is very important to know. In this case, it has been generated in the Sandbox portal. Further, we also have the acknowledgement number and the acknowledgement date here. So what can also be done from here is generation of e-way bill. So when I click this button, by entering the vehicle number and choosing the mode of transport, I can easily generate an e-way bill within 2 clicks. Now I will also have the e-way bill number, the date until when the e-way bill is valid. Further, if I just refresh this PDF or open it again, I should actually open this PDF again. It will also contain the e-way bill details. So firstly, we only had the IRN details. Then we generated the e-way bill. So our PDF also has the e-way bill details now. So this is how e-way bill can be generated from GST Zen. Now I'm going to download the acknowledgement JSON and verify that this invoice was actually created in the government portal. So during the presentation, I had shown a screen of the digitally signed invoice by the NIC portal. So that is exactly what we are going to do now. We are going to upload our acknowledgement JSON, and we are going to see the same screen. As you can see here, the NIC portal says this is digitally signed. This is the QR code. This is the IRN number, which is in fact the same number that you see here. And if you scroll further down, you will see that it is digitally signed by the NIC IRP portal. So this is how, using our acknowledgement JSON, you can verify that an e-invoice has actually been generated. So that brings me to the end of the Excel demo. So in Excel itself, we have 2 methods. You would have seen that there is another option here called your Excel method. I showed a demo for GST Zen Excel full. There is another option here for your Excel. So your Excel works in a similar way. Let's say there are additional fields that you want to incorporate. That is not possible in our Excel template. So what we will do, we will take your Excel template, we will map it to our software so that every time you can just drag and drop your Excel template with additional columns and you can generate e-invoices. The workflow and the functionality remains the same. There will only be a one-time activity of mapping your Excel columns, which will be handled by our team. So that is the only difference between your Excel and GST Zen Excel full. We also have integrations with Tally SAP. And if you see here, there's a button to upload JSON. This is very helpful for software developers. If you have the e-invoice JSON, you can directly just upload it here and an e-invoice will get generated. So now we will be moving on to the API demo, how you can use GST Zen's API to generate an e-invoice. So what you see here is GST Zen's API URL endpoint, and you have to make a post request to this endpoint along with the e-invoice JSON in the body and a token in the header. So this token we will be providing when you're doing the sandbox testing. The actual token will be present in your GST Zen account. It will be present in this account. That is the token that you will have to use when you want to generate an e-invoice in the production portal. So now I have the e-invoice JSON ready. Now this is the exact format specified by the government portal. If you notice, I also have the e-way bill details here. So what will happen when I post to this endpoint is that an e-invoice and an e-way bill both will get generated at the same time. And I'm going to send this request and I will show you what the response structure looks like. So this is what the response will look like. Status is 1, which means it was a successful request. The IRN got generated. Pin to pin calculated distance is 1350 kilometers. So this is calculated based on the ship to and dispatch pin codes that I have provided here. And it is for the purpose of e-way bill. So the other fields are basically your IRN number, your acknowledgement details, your acknowledgement, your acknowledgement date and number, and your e-way bill date and number. If you scroll further down, you will also see till when the e-way bill is valid. So all the information that is necessary for you to write back into your ERP, we provide that in our response. And we also provide the signed QR code and signed invoice. So very similar to the acknowledgement JSON, it is exactly the same. If you save this to a file, you will be able to validate it in the government portal. Then we also provide the QR code as a part of the response. So we provide the URL to the image. All you have to do is call this URL from your ERP, whichever programming language the ERP is built in. You will be able to call this URL and download this QR code. And finally, we also have the invoice PDF here. So the invoice that is present inside GST Zen, this is a link to the same invoice. You'll be able to directly download the invoice PDF from the response. You don't necessarily have to log in to this account to download the PDF. So that is the purpose of providing the PDF URL in the response. So this is how an e-invoice can be generated. So let's say there was a mistake and you want to cancel the e-invoice. All you have to do is simply change the URL. We have a cancel API endpoint, and nothing in the request, nothing else in the request needs to be changed. The body of the request will be the same. You have to post the same JSON. The header also is the same. All you have to change is the URL, and you hit send and you will get a message called IRN cancelled. So now I will generate a fresh invoice and show you the invoice in GST Zen. All right. And then I will also show you how on cancelling it here, the status will get updated in your GST Zen account. So now I go back to my sales register. So in GST Zen, the sales register is a place where all your sales invoices will be stored. It is essentially an invoice list, and you will be able to apply multiple filters. You can search by an invoice number, you can search by recipient. So let's say you want to fetch all the invoices for a certain recipient. You can enter their GST number here and filter by that GST number. So you can apply a lot of filters here by HSN code, GST rate, status of the e-invoice, whether it is cancelled, generated, or whether it is an error. So you can apply a range of filters and download the Excel file. Firstly, you can download an invoice level Excel and a line item level Excel. And you can also download up to 50 e-invoice PDFs. at the same time. So bulk download of e-invoice PDFs is also possible. So now I will be searching for the invoice that I generated through API, and the invoice is not yet here. 1 second. Invoice not found. That is because I have posted it to the wrong. I have posted. So this is an example of how our API handles error requests. So what we tried doing there was Manisha, can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So what we did there was we tried to cancel an e-invoice, which was not even generated in the first place. That is why it says invoice not found in GST Zen. So now I have corrected my API endpoint and I hit post. And you will see that we get the same response because all I changed was the invoice number. The rest of the response will remain the same. Now, if I search for the invoice, I will be able to find it here. So it's generated, I open it. This is the information, the PDF that is there in the response. Here is the button, the acknowledgement JSON in the response. Here is the button for that. And of course, you can cancel it from here, but I'm going to cancel it through the API and show you that the status gets updated in your GST Zen account as well. So now I have canceled the invoice. I get a response saying IRN canceled. So I come here and I refresh the screen and the e-invoice is canceled. So I will no longer be able to generate an e-invoice for the same invoice number. So this is how you can generate e-invoice, e-waybill, cancel e-invoice through GST Zen's API. Now we will be looking at the last part of my demo, which is our billing software. GST Zen has a new billing software from which you can directly create an invoice inside of this account itself and then create an e-invoice for that. So let me quickly show you what the interface looks like. You can click sales register and then click create invoice. When you do that, you will see this interface. Firstly, we have the document details. So the flow of this is similar to the sections of the e-invoice schema. We have the document details, the supplier and recipient details. Then we have ship to and dispatch. Now, since this is optional, we have hidden the sections. If at all you want to provide ship to and dispatch, you can simply check that box and we will display the details. If it's not necessary, you can uncheck and they will disappear. So that is about the ship to and dispatch. Then we have the line item details, of course. So without line items, we cannot generate an invoice. Hence, you can enter the line items here. We have all the mandatory fields that are necessary for an e-invoice to be generated. And then any additional details that you might want to add, like notes, if there are any notes specific to that invoice, you can enter that here and it will appear in the PDF. So I'm just entering something called as ABC. And also the payment terms, if at all there are any payment terms, it can be set on a GST number level and you'll be able to select it from this drop down. Further, we have another section called invoice details. So let's say you want to provide a discount of ₹100 on invoice level, you can add that value here. Or if there's a miscellaneous charge, if there are some other charges that you want to add to the invoice, you can add that here. And you can also round off the invoice here. So let me quickly generate a new invoice and show you how this works. So now here we have the document number. So this document number will be auto-populated based on the invoice series. So if your latest invoice is INV 001, and when you come to this page, this will automatically be populated with INV 002. So that is how this works. All you have to select here is the document date. The document type and the supply type code will be set to invoice and B2B by default. If it is a credit note or a debit note, you can change it here. And if at all it is a different kind of invoice, if the supply type is different, you can change it from the drop down. Reverse charge and IGST on intra will be set to no on default. You can change it to yes if applicable. Now, the supplier details, which is basically your details when you create an invoice, they will be auto-populated because the software already has the GST number, the legal name, trade name, state, and PIN code. The recipient details, you can select from the drop-down list. You can either search by GST number, or you can search by the company name. That also will be auto-populated. So GST Zen has a customer supplier master, and it is a one-time activity to upload your customer supplier master into GST Zen. And the benefit of doing that is whenever you select a company name like this, we will auto-populate the other fields. You do not have to manually enter data into the other fields. So that is the benefit of uploading your customer supplier master. I am not going to enter ship to and dispatch details for this invoice. Now, product in GST Zen, there is a product master as well. If you have all the information related to the product, like the HSN code, unit rate, the taxes, and the tax rates, all you have to do here is simply select the product, and the rest of the information will get auto-populated. You can see that the total item value is 224. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the quantity 3, and I will also add another line item called tables, and I will have 2 tables in my invoice. So I have 3 chairs and 2 tables, and this is my total item value for each line item. And coming back here, just select the HSN code from the drop down, and all I have to do now is come here, and you will see that the total amount, it's already calculated that as 1,344, and now you want to have a discount of 100 rupees on this invoice. It becomes 1,244, but you have some miscellaneous charges, so you enter 50, becomes 1,294. So this is how we handle the computations. And if at all you want to round off the total amount, it's not applicable in this case, but if you want to round off the total amount, you can simply click this button and it will take care of it. Now I'm going to save the invoice. You can see a message here that says invoice created. Please note that only an invoice has been created. An e-invoice has not been generated for this invoice. So how I can do that is by clicking review. Before that, if at all you want to create a new invoice, you just have to click this green button and you will be able to start from scratch again. So now I click on review, and we are very familiar with this page at this point. We have the invoice details here, we have the line item details here. All we have to do is click here to generate an e-invoice, and an e-invoice gets generated. So this is how, using GST Zen's billing software, you can directly create an invoice in GST Zen and then also go ahead and create an e-invoice. Now you might ask a question, do I have to create an e-invoice after every single invoice? No, you can just create say 30 to 40 invoices and then go to the sales register, and you will be able to upload 30, 40 invoices, regular tax invoices, to the government portal just by selecting the invoices and then clicking a button here that says upload e-invoices for selected invoices. So you can just filter out all the invoices that are not generated. So we have a status filter. You select, you just choose not generated and filter it. So all the invoices that you see will be in yellow color, which means an e-invoice has not been generated. So you can select that and just say upload e-invoices for selected invoices, and e-invoices will get generated for all the invoices in this page. So bulk upload is also possible through your sales register. So what we have seen so far is a demo of generating e-invoices through Excel method, through API method, and through GST Zen's billing software method. And like we have mentioned earlier, we also have integrations with Tally, SAP, custom ERPs, and database integrations as well. So that brings me to the end of my demo. If you have any questions, please put it up in the chat box and we will address all your questions. I think what we can do is, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and then you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question.
If anyone of you have any questions, you can share your questions here. Monica, you have any questions? Vatsa, is my voice audible?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Anyone has any questions, we can take. Rajendra, if your ERP can handle the e-invoice, you don't definitely need additional ASP services. Let's say if there are no questions, we can conclude the session. And the members, our coordinates are here. You can always connect to us.
Sir, I will just display the coordinates for a couple of minutes. And then if there are no questions.
Sure. Sure. Yes, Mr. Rajendra, you can ask the question.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
please
can
tell
you,
me.
sir, how it will be done in Tally, sir? Will I still need GST Zen if I generate e-invoice bill in Tally?
Yeah. So there would be an add-on. So directly from your ERP, the e-invoice gets generated, and this data gets recorded to your GST.
Yes, sir, will you show you how it's done?
Right now, I maybe Vatsa, in our next session, if you can share the link, we will be able to show you a demo also. We will share you, we will connect to you. You please write to us. Our team will connect you and will show you the demo.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Vatsa, you can share the recorded link also so that people can, if someone joined late, they will be able to attend it at a later point.
Sure, sir. Yes, everybody after the webinar, we will be sharing a copy of the presentation and the recorded webinar to the email ID with which you're registered.
Vijay, even from ERP, you can do e-invoice. So you can again get in touch with us. Our team will do it.
Have we answered all the questions? Sir, if there are no more questions, I think we can end the session. Hello.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, everything is done, sir.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We will share the information to your